Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. Visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Okay, so we're continuing our steels that I work in series. We've done, I think the first one was 440C stainless, then it was 1095 high carbon steel, then it was 5160 spring steel, and then 52100 high carbon steel. And now we are going to we've got two left to do. The last one's going to be kind of a miscellaneous and memory type steel. And then the one that we're doing right now is on pattern welded steel. Everybody loves pattern welded steel, right? It's real pretty to look at. It can, make a pretty good knife. It is not one of my favorites. Although I do carry, my everyday carry right now is in 1095 and 15N20 pattern welded Damascus. It is, I want to say, it's about like a 400 layer-ish, something like that. And you can see this is my everyday carry and has been for, I carried this every day when I made it for, I don't know, a year or so. And then, I got bored with it, so I made another one and then carried that one for a little while. And then, now I'm back to carrying this one. So like I said, the blade's in 400-ish layer, 1095 and 15N20. And that is some Damascus, or not Damascus, cottonwood burl that I stabilized here in the shop with cactus juice, that thermo activated wood stabilizing resin. Damascus can make a really good knife. This one right here, like I said, I would not be carrying it if it wasn't a pretty good knife. It can have good to excellent edge retention. It can have good to excellent toughness. Kind of depends on how you heat treat it and what kind of, your blade geometry, the flexibility to design into it. As far as I'm concerned, it's not near on par with like 5160 as far as toughness, and it's not near on par with something like straight 52100 when it comes to edge retention. I have seen that it will, like I said, if you do it all right, okay, the 1095 and 15N20, I believe will cut a little bit better than straight 1095. A little bit, okay? But it will have a lot more toughness than straight 1095 also. So it's, it's a good all-around, using class steel, and it is also very beautiful. The patterns that guys are coming out with Damascus, some of them are just absolutely amazing. A good buddy of mine, James Rodabaugh, that guy makes some pattern welded steel that you look at it and you're just blown away. I mean, there's just no words really to describe how beautiful that stuff looks in person. I mean, it looks pretty dang good on a computer screen, but you hold that stuff in person and you twist it back and forth and see how the light plays on it, and you're like, oh my God, that's just out of this world. Me personally, I never really caught the Damascus bug. Actually, first of all, so this style of Damascus works great on EDCs, works good on neckers. I've made straight razors out of it, and it works pretty good with straight razors. This is one of my first ones. Let's see if we can't get you some of the pattern going on in there. That's 1095 and 15N20 and Cocobolo scales, something like that. Pocket knives, it works really good in pocket knives. This is the 940 Benchmade blade that I carried for a couple of years, something like that, at a 1095 and 15N20. I do typically random patterns with my Damascus. So I never really caught the Damascus bug, okay? I mean, I make it, I work in it sometimes. I might make half a dozen knives a year out of 15N20 and Damascus steel. I probably make oh, I don't know, on a slow year, I might make like 150, 200 knives, something like that. I think the most I ever made in one year was almost 400. It really just kind of depends on the class of knife that I'm making. Lately, it's been lower numbers of knives, but I've been making an awful lot of pocket knives, and I'm still learning quite a bit on those. They are getting better. What I've got on the bench right now is I'm making two of these bad boys. These are the Skagel style slip joints. And these ones have got two blades, jigged micarta scales or covers, peened brass pins, and I think that the other ones, I think I'm going to go with the nail nicks. I don't really like these elongated holes. They just collect a whole bunch of crap in there. But so it takes an awful lot longer for me to build one of these than it does, for me to build, an EDC type knife. But yeah, so the Damascus knives, I don't really make that many of them, and I never did catch the bug, which is, I'm glad, because Damascus steel is one of the most frustrating and most wasteful processes that I think I've ever seen in my entire life. You can take, okay, so this right here is how I get the steel nowadays. I was cutting it all up by myself, and then the last time I started making Damascus, I thought, to heck with this. And my buddy James, he said, why are you doing all that? Just order up the steel already cut from Kelly something or other, and I can't remember who it was. I think the sheet is in my box down there. But he has the steel already cut in, sections that match each other. So this is, I believe this is 1084, and this is 15N20. Now, with the other steels, I'm all about where are you getting them and how consistent is that supplier. Because those steels are either just getting stock removal and then heat treated, or they're getting forged and then stock removal and then heat treated, okay? When you do the pattern welding thing, you are pretty much, you're just a step above the mill, okay? Because you're getting this steel really, really hot, and you are forge welding it together. And then when you're forge welding it together, you're getting it really hot again, and you're forge welding it together again. And so you're almost to the point where you're almost making new steel, all right? So at that point, then it really doesn't matter as much where your steel comes from, and I'm not quite so critical on where it comes from and the exact composition of it, okay? Because you're changing the steel quite a bit when you mix the two of them together, and that's what you're doing, okay? Now, when you look at the lines in a pattern on, a piece of pattern welded steel or Damascus, like when you etch it, right? And you look at that, in between the lines there, and you see some lines are dark and some lines are bright, all right? Well, the brighter lines are going to be your 15N20, okay? And your darker lines are going to be your 1084 or your 1095. Because 15N20 has got a lot more nickel in it, I believe. Okay, and so it doesn't etch quite as easily as the 1084. But you've also got this thing called carbon migration, all right? Which means that as you heat up a high carbon steel, once it gets hot enough, okay, that carbon tends to move around in there. So if you take a piece of high carbon steel and a piece of low carbon steel, and then you weld them together, and then you forge them out, and then you cut it in half, and then you put them together, and you weld them together again, and you forge it out, and you cut it in half, and you weld them together again, and you keep doing that over and over and over again. And if you were to take a piece of that low carbon steel and test it for carbon, you will find out that that low carbon steel has actually gained some carbon from the high carbon steel, and the high carbon steel has actually lost some carbon to the low carbon steel. That's my understanding of it. So in that case, when you are basically smelting new steel just by forge welding instead of putting it into a pot and melting it down, and casting steel, then your individual ingredients aren't quite as critical as on a steel that you're just grinding out and then heat treating, or just forging and then grinding and heat treating. It's still important, but it's not quite as critical. Now, back to why I haven't caught the Damascus bug, and why I'm just going to leave that out. Why I haven't caught it yet, and why I'm really glad about that. So I do enjoy making Damascus. When I do make it, it'll be every 3 or 4 years, something like that. I'll, get a whole bunch of this together, and I'll just spend a whole week, and that's all that I'll do, is stand there in front of that power hammer and anvil and cut and forge and weld and forge it out, and then cut it and then weld it and then forge it out and cut it and weld it and forge it out. And the first day is usually pretty exciting. The second day is usually still a little bit exciting. And then it's just a whole bunch of flat out work until you get to, finished product. And then it's really exciting. But pretty much if you take these two pieces, that is a lot of knives right there, right? Just the way they are. 1095 or 1084 or 1095 makes a great knife, and I hear 15N20 makes a great knife by itself too, right? You take all of that, now depending upon what kind of pattern you're trying to make, by the time you get done, the Damascus that you get will be like this, okay? A fifth or a sixth of what your starting material was. So all this steel that you paid for turns into slag on your anvil or underneath your power hammer, or it turns into dust underneath your grinder. That is a lot of waste, and it is a lot of time. And it's, like I said, it's something that I enjoy doing, but I do not enjoy it enough to be doing that like year round. I am much more into, making the knives themselves, and lately into making pocket knives and making, mechanisms that work, folding type knives, that sort of deal. The guys that do have the ability to stand in front of the power hammer day in, day out, and that's what they do to make Damascus, man, those guys they're tough. They really are. And some of the stuff that they come out with is just absolutely out of this world gorgeous. But it's not one of the things that I'm really all that much into. I do carry a Damascus knife because I figure I'm a knife maker. I'm probably supposed to be. It's probably expected of me. And they make good knives, and I like them well enough and everything. But yeah, it's not something I want to be doing every day. And they're also expensive. For me to take, a neck knife and make it out of 1095 or 440C stainless is the same price, because it's just stock removal. I order the steel, I profile it, I heat treat it, and then, this is a lot of talking sometimes. I order the steel, I profile it, I cycle it, I heat treat it, I put grind it, finish it, all that kind of stuff. With the Damascus, now you're looking at, making the steel. You got to count into a time all the wasted steel, all the wasted grinding belts, plus all the time to make it, and then the failure rate. Sometimes I'll stand in front of that power hammer. That first day, I'll usually have at least a couple of screw ups until I get back into the rhythm of things. All that wasted steel right there is just wasted steel. It's just waste, and all that adds up to cost. And so Damascus, while it might be, a good steel and everything, it's very expensive because it's just a wasteful process. So 1095 or 1084 and 15N20 Damascus steel, it's got good to excellent edge retention. It's got good to excellent toughness. Not quite as tough as like 5160 or 52100, but it's still up there considerably. It's got excellent beauty and excellent eye appeal. The cons are it's expensive because, it's very time consuming to make. It's very wasteful to make. Yeah, and you got to be the right kind of guy to make Damascus day in, day out, all year round. So again, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time.